You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about why forgiveness is the new F word. And I'm really excited to get into this topic because you know how much I believe in forgiveness and how I feel that forgiveness definitely has to begin with yourself and not necessarily those who have perpetrated against you. But joining me today is Shannon Moroney, who is the author of 2 best-selling memoirs, Through the Glass, which is her own story of the violent crimes from her first husband, and Out of the Shadows, which is a story of human trafficking survivor Tamia Nagy. And so, you know, this is, forgiveness is going to be huge because, yeah, you know, you need forgiveness to heal. So, Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am really excited to talk about my favorite F word.
Right? I absolutely love this title.
Well, thank you so much. It's not the title of my new book, which is coming out and which is how we got connected. But the title of my new book is called Heal for Real, a guided journal to forgiving others and yourself. But my whole concept behind bringing this book to the world is really to help everyone who picks it up, everyone who's going through a journey to overcome something that happened to them or that they did, and all of the complicated emotions that come along with it, to just be able to explore what forgiveness means as well as what it doesn't mean. I think I've led workshops and retreats, multi-day retreats called the F word for over a decade. I'm a therapist, a trauma therapist in private practice, so forgiveness comes up all the time, and it means something just a little bit different to every person. And my favorite thing really too is give people space and support to figure out what it means for them. So I can't wait to talk to you today about
yeah. Let's just dive in.
We should probably just stop saying the other F word. You know, F this, F that, F you. You know, there's a point at which maybe we need to push a little bit past that to get to some real healing and connection. And I love what you said at the beginning about self-forgiveness. It can begin with the self for sure. And I can tell you and everyone listening that in well over a decade of doing this work, plus my own personal journey, which I'm still on, by the way, because aren't we all on
It's never ending, is it?
It's never ending. Is that self-forgiveness is actually the hardest for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
I see myself, I see other people forgiving others, forgiving institutions, forgiving systems far more easily than we forgive ourselves for even much more minor transgressions.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I know why I think it is, but you know what? Tell me, I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions on why is it so easy for us to forgive everybody else except for ourselves?
Well, okay, I'll tell you what I think if you tell me then what you think. I love that. So I think there's a great barrier called shame that we have such a difficult time overcoming. Because when we have been hurt, when we've been put down, when we've been assaulted, when we have been betrayed, or when we assault, betray, put down others, there is this component of intense unworthiness that comes upon us. And when we feel that intense unworthiness, even when something is not our fault, we can have this huge shame that makes us think that we're not worth what we give to everybody else.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And, you know, to add to that, I think, too, we're so geared towards self-hatred and self-loathing that, you know, it just kind of goes hand in hand with that, not forgiving ourselves. Forgiving ourselves means, oh my gosh, does that mean I'm like on a step to liking myself? That's not allowed, you know?
Yeah. And we get stuck in patterns. It's really hard to break habits. I have twins, and when they were little tiny babies, I hired a sleep trainer to save my sanity. And the sleep trainer came and she said, I just want you to know that it only takes a baby about 3 days to break a habit, or 3 nights to break this habit of waking up all the time. But it takes adults at least 21 days. And I actually think it takes adults about the number of days or even months equivalent to our age to break our habits. And we need a lot of support. So if we're in the habit of thinking that we're not worthy, or we're in the habit of defending ourselves to try to feel bigger, because the truth is that whatever has happened in our lives made us feel really, really small and really powerless and really voiceless. That's what victimization does. It gives us all the negative V's: voiceless, vulnerable, violated. And when we want to overcome a victim mentality, one of the ways that we can do that is to develop our self-worth and turn the negative V's into the positive V's of vocal, validated, vindicated, vibrant, and victorious. And that all sounds very lofty, but I actually see it as being a really practical process. And forgiveness is one of the, it's both a philosophy as much as it is a really practical application that can help us transform those fundamental feelings of lack of worth that maybe someone tried to take from us or we gave away.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I know for me, when I first heard about forgiveness, or first really thought about forgiveness as far as healing goes, my thoughts were, well, why in the world would I forgive them? Those who have hurt me, they don't deserve my forgiveness. And I didn't understand that forgiveness doesn't mean I'm forgiving them necessarily, but I'm forgiving myself for my actions, my thoughts, the self-loathing, the self-harm, all of that. And the more I process that and the more I work through what forgiveness meant to me, I actually found that in a way I was actually able to forgive those who have hurt me. And it doesn't mean that I'm okay with it. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that it was acceptable or that I condone it, but it means that I am now letting it go and it no longer has power over me.
Exactly. You put it perfectly. I often have in the journal, one of the activities, it's very hands-on. There's little readings, and then there's activities, everything from fill in the blank and circle the word to longer pieces of writing. And one of them really, I provide a whole list of other words that people kind of jump to when they hear the word forgiveness. And some of them are maybe negative, like the word you mentioned, condoning. Of course, forgiveness doesn't mean condoning. But sometimes when we first see it, that's why it's a bit of an F word, because we take offense. Like, wait, I'm supposed to forgive my offender. What does that mean? That means I'm letting them off the hook. They're getting away with it. I'm saying it was okay. And that's not at all what forgiveness means, of course. Although it does mean letting someone off the hook. It's just not the person that committed the harm. It's you. And that's how I thought of it in myself, in terms of my own journey, that really began in 2005, just after my wedding, when I was away at a counseling conference, and a police officer came to my door and told me that my husband had turned himself into police after kidnapping and brutally sexually assaulting 2 women in our community the night before. And that is the moment that, for me, just everything shattered. On the front cover of my book, Through the Glass, is all that shattered glass that I just felt like had happened in that instant. as life as I knew it was over. And, I was going to be confronted with, just so many things and so much intense trauma and helplessness and questions and all that. In my process, one of the things that I did early on was actually go to the jail to see my husband through the looking glass. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was the monster on the front page of the paper. I didn't know if he was the good and loving person that I'd shared my life with for a few years and planned to share the rest of it with. I think the truth is no one is one-dimensional. And, but I went to see him, and I received the gift of someone who was remorseful and apologetic, and not everybody gets that. And it made it easier. I definitely cover in the book, what do you do when you don't have a remorseful or apologetic or accountable offender? Because that's the situation more often than not. And I remember at one point offering him forgiveness, but I don't know that he was ever or would ever be able to accept it. But in that moment, I realized that the gift was to me, because I was on the hook at different times of anger and resentment. And if you just picture, a hook in a fish, that the fish is floundering, trying to get breath, trying to get off the hook, trying to swim forward. And the person who hooked it has all the control. So for me, I just think forgiveness is the word that I use to describe trying to, and I think being successful in gracefully unhooking myself from all of the negative emotions that came with being traumatized in the way that I was, and all the terrible things that happened after, my community turning against me, losing my job, guilt by association, all the terrible things that happen when you're suddenly a wife of a sex offender instead of what I was the day before, which was a volunteer, an educator, a newlywed, all these wonderful things. And then I got, just labeled right along with him. And that's what enabled me to forgive in a way that let me swim free, let me get off the hook of rage and resentment, because I don't deserve to live that way. Just like you, Tracy, don't deserve to live forever with all of the negative emotions that were handed to you when somebody else took control of your life for however many moments, minutes, years it was.
Right.
And no one deserves that. And so forgiveness is one of the ways that we do let ourselves off the hook, and we get to swim again freely toward our own goals. Maybe we have a scar for sure, but that forgiveness process is a really, really, really powerful gift. It just doesn't always go to who we think we might be even directing it at.
Absolutely. Excuse me. When you said that, you offered him the gift of forgiveness and you didn't know if he would accept it, it just made me think that really that gift of forgiveness really, like you said, is for ourselves. It's not for the other person. They have to do their own forgiveness. Knowing that we have forgiven them for their transgressions, that we're letting go, that it's no longer going to control us or have power over us, that might help them. But that's on them. That's their own process, their own journey that they have to go through. But the whole thing about forgiveness just seems to be, in a lot of ways, almost taboo. Like, how could you forgive your husband for assaulting, brutally assaulting two women? How could you forgive him, and it's, it just seems like such a taboo thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I, I've spoken all over the world about it. And I always say, I don't forgive his actions, but it's unforgivable.
Right.
What he did is unforgivable. The human being, for me, forgiveness is a commitment to see the human being behind the horror.
Exactly.
And I have had forgiveness relapses. on my journey. Absolutely. I have unforgiven. I've re-forgiven. And all that I noticed, in myself is that when I'm in a time of a forgiveness relapse, I'm not doing very well. Mm-hmm. And it makes me into somebody that isn't great for other people. When I get rehooked on anger or resentment or blame, all those things, then it just actually keeps me from being the person that I want to be.
Right.
And so that, again, that's what I think when people really understand it, that it's not a weakness. It's not stand by your man in some sort of blind, childlike admiration or something. It is actually a really, really strong commitment to myself, it's a commitment to justice. It's a commitment to accountability and continuing to hold him accountable. It's a commitment to continuing to be the person that I want to be and the world needs me to be. And if that simply means that as someone who embraces forgiveness, if that simply means that I'm less likely to lash out at a cashier or drive with rage, that's good enough. It's worth it.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
hurt people. Yeah. And as long as I'm hurting, I can hurt someone else. And, in getting to know my first husband's more deeply into his past and learning in our prison conversation just exactly how much he was hurt that likely led to him having the capability to hurt other people. And again, that's not there's no excusing, there's no condoning, but there is compassion and there can be understanding. And then there can also just be that real resolve and commitment to make sure that my own hurts don't ever lead me to hurt others. And I'm not perfect in that. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's a lot of self-forgiveness. There's a lot of asking for forgiveness that I've had to do, that I do in my life. Sometimes I feel it's daily, in the great imperfections that we all are of being, works of art in progress.
Right.
But knowing that I think, none of us deserve less than our best friend or more than our worst enemies. That there's an equity there. That we can strive for and hope or believe that with greater equity comes that a renewal of that fundamental worth that we talked about as being missing in the beginning of our conversation, talking about that shame
right.
and that lack of worth, so.
And, and along with the forgiveness piece comes peace.
Yes. Oh, how beautifully put. Yeah.
It kind of calms the raging seas, mm-hmm. The anger goes, the negative feelings, all of that go. You can't be in a forgiving place and still be a victim. It just doesn't work.
Exactly.
And
the whole name of this podcast is perfect. It's releasing trauma. Exactly. It's that release. It's releasing the fish from the hook so it can swim again. It's releasing yourself from the pain and the anguish you're carrying around because it's exhausting. It is exhausting.
It is.
To be in rage and resentment, it is absolutely exhausting. And so that's one of the reasons. That's a very practical reason to embrace forgiveness. I mean, we don't have to be monks in monasteries with the time, maybe as we might perceive from the outside, to philosophize and meditate on forgiveness. We're living in a real everyday world where we need some practical applications for this big, new, incredible F word. And one of those things that we can do is just realize it's just actually impractical and a waste of my energy to continue to be enraged about something or someone or something that happened in the past, even if the past was a day ago or the past was 25 years ago, because I need that energy for other things. I just need it for other things, and I want it for other things. And that's what we deserve. That's what the people around us deserve, is for us to have energy to put into, our own passions and into our communities.
And for us to have the positive energy. Yeah. Turn that negative energy into a positive energy.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right. Yeah.
You just feel better. You just
feel so much better.
You just feel so much better.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I work very hard not to get angry anymore. I used to get angry at the drop of a hat, and I don't like that feeling. I really don't.
It's pretty yucky.
Yeah. So, I work really hard not to get angry, and then I work doubly hard to get over being angry very quickly.
Well, that's the thing, right? And I think it's a lot of it too is just accepting that, we react to things, especially when you have trauma, because the way that it's very sticky. It likes to hang out in the front part of the brain and stick onto a whole bunch of other stuff and make life pretty difficult. And, and so when those little hooks happen, or you get back on rage or anger, again, it's a process of, okay, I forgive myself. I'm a human being living my life. But what you said, I think, is really important, Tracy, is that when that does happen, when you are in the practice of forgiveness and you have that as your mantra, your goal, or your desire, you can get more quickly back to that place of peace or letting things go. It doesn't take quite as long. I mean, it is something that we, there's most people, I think of forgiveness not necessarily as something you do once, but something that is actually a continuous process. And other times not. Other times it's more simple, or we have a big feeling that comes over us, like, I'm going to walk away from this now, or I'm going to walk away from the pain of this. And, but it is a unique process for each person. Absolutely.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today. I love talking about forgiveness and how it just really helps us to heal and move on.
Yeah. Me too. Thank you so much. And Tracy, thanks for sharing your own personal journey. That's how we all learn, is from the stories, each other's stories, and what works for one person might work for us. And so I invite your listeners as well to visit my community page, healforreal.org, where we're just getting some discussion going about forgiveness, and there's more information about the book, and I'm there to support people's journeys.
Awesome. Awesome. So you heard it, healforreal.org. And, I will have all of Shannon's information down in the show notes, a link to her book, everything. So just head over to releasingtraumapodcast.com and pull up Shannon's show. Excuse me. All her contact information will be there. Absolutely. So again, Shannon, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thanks. Let's talk again sometime.
Absolutely. Okay. And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We'll talk to you in the next show. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.